Yeah, and I mean, to that point, then, as everything's been changing like that, with some of the changes at Citrix and Omnissa and the VMware split and all that, I'm sure that you saw a lot of change happen with those two companies doing the changes they're doing, and as it rolls down to you as a VAR, and especially to your customers when they got renewals, and then they're wondering like, should I stay? Should I go? I'm sure was a lot of conversations for the past year or so.
No, huge. And it was actually one of the things that we talked about as we led into the subject of CloudPC and AVD yesterday was what are the things that are pushing to this direction and making this a conversation. And that's one of the big ones was licensing changes and Broadcom and Citrix plays.
Yep.
Right. Those two alone over the last 12 to 16 months between those two major players has made it so that every customer is asking, what should I do next? What are my other options maybe that make more sense, depending on the features I need? So.
Yeah, and it's super interesting because Citrix is in majority of the accounts, the larger accounts, right? And you look at what they're doing with their platform license, right? It's like they keep buying up technology to obviously grow laterally within the environment, and it's disrupting the ecosystem, right? In my opinion, it's just what you're starting to see. Obviously, a Uber agent, great solution, but Control Up is amazing. We've been Control Up partner for 11 years, early advisory board, just incredible solution. But you got Uber agent now, right? And then they went and just bought, iGel was like, man, iGel is where you're at. And then they bought Unicom.
Unicom,
And so if you're, a large enterprise customer, they're going to be talking at the higher levels and say, hey guys, you're a platform customer. I know you're a big iGel. Maybe you want to take a look at this Unicom stuff. Maybe you want to, and so the customer has to do their due diligence and look at it, right? And so, now it doesn't mean they're going to have all the solutions, right, or all the features and functionalities that they need for the business, but it disrupts the conversations with our customers, right? And it's good for the platform ones. There's a ton of value, and we're telling the whole story, right? We're doing SPA, and we, those customers are loving it, right? But some of the other customers, and we have to bring in these other solutions to help with that. But it's also, expanding things and, technologies we talked about for years with application packaging. You're doing some more conversation around that because now you're looking at managing that application on the physical endpoint with Intune and also in the CloudPC. Yep. We're looking at we've been working with third-party patching solutions because you're going more persistent. So it definitely changed kind of how we're looking at things and then just kind of this like just non-persistent route. I'd say it definitely impacted, all those changes impacted the practice for sure.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned Uber Agent and Unicom, and those are two great acquisitions by Citrix, but I still think their best one, as of late has been Device Trust. And it was more from getting that technology, but it was also strategic too, because if someone else would have picked that up, that would have been a big acquisition for somebody else. So it seems like they struck at the right time for that acquisition.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And what's great about that, besides being probably the one most well known to us, and really those of us that have played in that sandbox with Device Trust, it's an incredible product. But they in January they backported that to also be allowed for DAS. Even our DAS customers that haven't gone to the UHMC licensing, either 1 or 2.0, doesn't matter. You have it. And so it's starting to show up now in all of our customers' tenants on the Device Trust side of things. So it's a really good point you make with just another value add feature, that they gave them.
It helps against that, Citrix isn't a security company, right? I mean, they're acquiring technologies and really focusing because they are setting their strategy. They're focusing on their enterprise customers, and they're going to drive and they're building phenomenal product. And now they're going to be integrating Device Trust is just another, play in that, not a security company story. So definitely great bringing that up because that was an awesome acquisition. So
kind of makes you think what they're going to do next.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think they have funds to do a lot of things.
Got that money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, other than Citrix, Omnissa, and Microsoft, who's some of the other players in the EUC space that you all are deploying or seeing or being brought up? Because I know for a while, the most two common head-to-head battle was Citrix and VMware. Microsoft was kind of the MVP for a little bit, just kind of minimum viable. But it's caught up a lot. And then it's like, all right, now you're down to, you can battle those three, but who's the other ones that come into the arena to do that? And I know sometimes it's really based on customer size and, on-prem cloud, all that. But what are some of the other ones you're seeing?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the big one for us, and I'll let Shane, we're now fully onboarded with Parallels here at Choice Solutions, so we're doing quite a bit with them. As you mentioned, the big three, right? Even for us, Omnissa, because it now is Omnissa, and there's some unlock from the VMware stack now, or will be. That for us is going to be a big play this year. So Omnissa is going to be folded into that enterprise type class play where Citrix Workspace is today. The Parallels really is the one where we're doing quite a bit with right now for that space that was really just thrown to the side by Citrix. And then we have some other players. We used to do a lot. We used to do some stuff with Frame. Now Dizian, not so much anymore, right? We've been talking to the fellows over with Sonnet.io. Is another one we've been talking to, and then. Shane, what was the other one?
Yeah, Porto. Yeah, we've been talking Porto. And so these are kind of Sonnet.io's newer, obviously. When you're a startup newer, you're able to look at things with a different lens, and they're kind of looking at it with a security-focused lens. But, we're looking at a Porto. Porto has been around for 10 plus years. They have a lot of longevity, working in their product, but they've been very laser focused on like the education space.
That's right.
And so they're kind of starting to break out, obviously, and they've done some great things in education, DAS-based solution, they built in all these classroom-based functionalities into the platform. So it's nice, but it's like with now, just like everything happens, right? Citrix just created a whole market now for all these people in small to medium business that don't have good solutions. So they naturally are jumping in that like, hey, we've been here 10 years. We got good stack. But that's why they have like AHV integration, something that's coming for them. So when that gets kind of integrated, we're going to start looking at it in-house for those customers, and they're looking at it with they're looking at Kubernetes, and they got containers, and so they have a modern architecture for what has been these bigger EUC vendors have been traditional infrastructure. And they haven't gone the modern route yet. They are in the control plane world, but not on-prem. And so these guys are on-prem and in the cloud. So kind of keeping an eye on things outside of just, Parallels. And we're looking at like a Porto is kind of our other one that we're looking at as well. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've noticed is when you look at all the other vendors other than those big three, their takes just on the nerdy thing, like the management console and how things are laid out and where you do things. Because for some of us, we've been doing Citrix for, 15, 20 years. You're used to clicking here. Even as they've moved stuff, there's been some familiarity. And I think that's where, when I first started getting into like the Parallels console, I was like, oh, that's there. Oh, okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. It's kind of intuitive, but you got to be like kind of break your own cycle because you've been used to it for so long. And a Porto is kind of the same way, the way it is. But it's got some things that I think would be, if people go down that road and that's what they choose, can go like, oh, that's pretty sweet. Because if you are in a meeting and everybody's in their virtual desktop and doing their thing, it's like, oh, let me just one click share my screen. Oh, let me share my screen. Like it's like the way it's built in for the teachers and the way the things layer in there, it's meant to be, sharing is caring. And it's like, oh, it's built in where it's not like I need a go-to meeting in my VDI or WebEx or whatever Zoom to then share something else. It's all just kind of built in. So that's kind of a real cool feature for it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, a Porto is one to keep an eye on too, especially with them coming into the enterprise space, being primarily from the education space. And then Parallels also another one. It kind of seems like they're rapidly adding features to kind of catch things up too. And with Parallels and Omnissa being owned by the same parent company, that will be interesting too long term to watch to see, are they going to stay separated or are they going to kind of bring them together? What's going to happen with them? So yeah, very interesting to see with all the change in the market, how things end up turning out with this.
Yep.
Yep, and that's in Parallels too on that side of the house is really like you look at like AVD, you look at Nerdio, unless you're staying in the Azure, the Azure world, you have all your data on that side, or your contractor, SaaS, web, modern technology. If you're in this hybrid world, if you're not in the Azure ecosystem with Azure local, right, local to run that, you're kind of locked in, right, and that's where Parallels kind of opens up. Where we typically are in the Citrix world with the openness, right? that's parallels right now. Now with that, there's some limitations around the greater things that, around unified communications, things are getting built back in, but that's where we kind of are able to cherry pick what makes sense based on the customer. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. We're going to keep an eye on things and continue conversations around that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked a lot about Azure actually, and then AWS was mentioned a little bit. Are you seeing a lot of your EUC customers adopt a cloud first or an all-in cloud strategy? And for those that have gone full cloud, have they pulled back all or some on-prem at all? Because I know that's been some things that I've seen out there where people are saying, I'm cloud first, I'm going all in cloud, but they either have that long migration, things don't go, it's expensive, and they end up pulling some things back, or there's like back-end stuff they can't move to the cloud, and that's not causing the best end user experience. So what are you seeing around that? And then, what are you seeing about them pulling back and either all or some back to on-prem?
Yeah, I mean, for us, with our customer, it's a hybrid cloud is really, that's it right now, right? We do have some that are greenfield, or as you mentioned, born in the cloud.
Yeah,
those are very small percentage, right? That works right out of the gates. A lot of times, this might be a startup companies, or they're not doing anything on prem, so you got a fresh new start. They want to start out there. They don't want to need no data center nonsense and nothing they're managing, right? So it makes sense, but that's a very small percentage. Majority of ours are hybrid cloud, where they have some customer managed on-prem situation, and maybe they don't want to have 2 data centers anymore. That's a big thing right now. They want to use public cloud for the secondary data center. As a burst, or just DR or whatever, to be able to use cloud to what cloud is best for, where you don't spend all your monies. Everything you got. But so and then multi-cloud comes into the play as well, because there are
not just the buzzword. We are seeing that more and more conversations come up with our customers around that.
A lot of them started doing something in AWS already, and then they see Azure for what we talked about earlier, being the use of licensing costs, entitlements, Microsoft winning over there. So Azure then comes into focus as well, but that doesn't mean their AWS side is going away.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, AWS is doing a lot of cool stuff over there with workspaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allowing Office and Client OS on top of workspaces. Now they got the personal and pool that they've rebranded into. And so AWS is putting themselves out there as a viable option. But for us, it's a lot of Azure. A good amount are doing something with AWS with the multi-cloud, and less so as you get outside of that to the GCPs and things like that. But
yeah, and that's also for us too. We kind of strapped ourselves. We're got almost 11 years now, if not a little longer, on the Nutanix side, because of that holistic nature, that agnostic nature that they have on the platform of being it's to create the HCI market before it was what it was. Obviously, everyone kind of folded in that story, and obviously Broadcom and the big changes there has just accelerated what we're seeing on that side on the Nutanix world. But their NC2 platform, their clusters platform, essentially being able to run Nutanix software on bare metal in Azure, in AWS. Future other clouds are coming. I'm not sure what I'm able to say here, but point is then the user can take that same workload, same management experience, same operational practices that they do today that they're used to, and travel that across, whether it's AWS, Azure. They can exit if they need to at that point, right? And it's bare metal, and you're not stuck to those T-shirt sizes. You're getting guaranteed performance and that sort of thing, but. That's something we've seen customers that will do the lift and shift to cloud and then realize after, like, oh, this is someone else's hardware, performance isn't the same, and they start running into these issues and they're trying to exit, cost drives up. So we try to go the hybrid nature first, as Oz mentioned, start creating a bridge, right? Get the Azure landing zone out there, get the bridge from a connectivity standpoint, start putting EUC workloads out there that make sense. And then we talk about, we really focus on the EUC side of things, but we talk about some other pieces as they make sense, potentially moving up there. But that's why we really like the Nutanix story. When Oz talks about the multi-cloud there is really important there.